Great, I'm so glad you're here. Yes, very much.
And I have no excuse for leaving early because I just had my dinner.
Okay. That's fine.
That's great. Yes. This is the portable.
Right. Look great here.
I think we're ready.
Good evening, brothers, sisters. On behalf of Pastor Burnett, William Burnett, we welcome you to our facilities, First Baptist Church Lake Crossing. One thing that we believe in is community outreach, and many things that we value is this program for every child value. As a matter of fact, I am their driver, so I thank God for that. The reason being is that when we have meetings like this to involve the community, everybody gets involved, everybody knows what's going on, and you know where your support should be, where your support should be. Your first support should be to your community, okay? And this is the way to get it started. So I'm not gonna say anything, but you are welcome to our facilities and look forward to the future serving you again. May God bless you. Now I give you Michelle Cash, who's the chairman of, let's get this right now, ECB, okay? God bless you and welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am Michelle Cash, and I'm the chair of the board of Every Child Valued. Thank you, Deacon McCrae and Pastor Burnett and this congregation for letting us use this beautiful space for what is going to be a very important conversation. And thank you to all of you for joining us. It's amazing that we can do this. It's amazing that we can do this, you know, online, in person, and all the ways that we've missed being together over the last year or so. For those of you who don't know, Every Child Valued is a nonprofit that provides learning and educational enrichment experience opportunities in partnership with the school district for students across the district who need extra support to have a fair and equitable learning and educational experience. We were originally formed to serve the families and students of Eggers Crossing Village, and we still live here. The programs exist at the ECB Fred Green Community Center and at the Lawrence Community Center out on Eggers Crossing Road. So I first want to acknowledge the staff and board members of ECB. So if you can stand up for just 1 second, so you can say thank you. All right, so we're going to hear more about ECB's history and our purpose in just a moment. I also want to thank our partner, Black & Lawrence, who is pushing the outreach of this and extending the reach of this conversation by live streaming on their website, on their Facebook page. Sorry. We welcome everybody who is joining us that way, and we hope this is the last time we get to work together. The focus of our conversation tonight is equity, diversity, and inclusion as it pertains to our school district and our students. ECV wanted to be a part of the discussion on this topic because it is vital to our work, but more importantly, it's vital to the students we serve. Again, we'll hear more about our perspective from Laura in just a minute. Our goal tonight is to give you, the voters, a chance to hear from each candidate how they will address these important issues so that you can have the information you need to make an informed voting choice. To be clear, every candidate was on the ballot was invited here tonight, and ECV does not endorse any specific candidate. So we made the decision not to allow candidates who could not join us to have a state thread tonight, with one short exception, which Laura will also take care of. If you want to learn more about the position of candidates who are not able to be here tonight, I suggest you reach out, you look at the Lawrence Gazette or the League of Women Voters website has that kind of information. Now we're going to watch a 3-minute video about ECV, and then we'll move on with our program.
You get when you set up an after-school and summer enrichment program right in the student's neighborhood.
I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an artist. I want to be a teacher.
You get students believing they can accomplish great things.
My goal is to be a really great student and get into a great college, and this program is helping me do that.
You get parents engaged, actively supporting their children's goals.
The after-school program at Edge Crossing Village is helping my kids be the type of students that I really want them to be.
It's almost like a wrap-around education from the school to the community and eventually to their home.
It really helps that they're in this program because when they come home, everything is pretty much laid out. What they did, I can go over their homework, I can see the progress, and see what they've done. So definitely, it's helping me to be a much better parent.
More and more of them have applied for scholarships. More and more of them have gone off to college. The services in the village really, really help.
All the kids in this community think it's cool to be in school.
I think this school is awesome.
I think the program is definitely working based on report cards that are coming back and standardized tests that are coming back. We know from the data collection that we've been doing, a lot of the students are making the honor roll.
Every Child Value is about improving the lives of families and their children, making it so their children can grow to be productive citizens and be able to take care of themselves.
What do you get when you set up an after-school and summer enrichment program right in the student's neighborhood?
I'd like to be an obstetrician.
I want to be a doctor when I grow up. I want to help people.
When I grow up, I want to be a doctor or a scientist.
This is what you get. Better students create a better learning environment for everyone. Every Child Value, in cooperation with the Lawrence Township Public Schools.
In general, what would you say about this program?
In general, I'd say this is the best program I've ever been to.
Well, now you know why we all volunteer to be part of this program. So now it is my great honor and privilege to introduce my board colleague, mentor, and friend, Fred Green, who is the co-founder of ECV and he will speak about the history of the program, of the village, and the long path of justice work that it took to get us to where we are today.
All in 5 minutes.
Great. Fine with you.
I want to thank Reverend Barnett, Deacon Ernest Chester, and members of the First Baptist Church of Eggers Crossing for opening the doors of the church to house our summer enrichment program. Because of COVID-19 pandemic, we had to find another space for our program. You graciously came to our rescue. For the last 2 years, you made it possible for our summer program to operate. It truly takes a village to raise a child. This community of Eggers Crossing has always been concerned about the education of their children. In 1966, before the development of Eggers Crossing Village, as president of the Eggers Crossing Civic League, I presented a position paper to the Board of Education that included, among many requests, that more attention paid to the concerns of the parents of Eggers Crossing, more communication between schools and the EC community, more African American teachers are being employed, and African American history be introduced into the curriculum. This was 1966. We have not said on this paper. It has been presented to previous board members through the years. Whomever is elected, we certainly will present you with a copy. Eggers Crossing Village, operated by Lawrence Nonprofit Housing, Inc., is an apartment complex, 100 subsidized unit, 1 to 5 bedroom, housing mostly African Americans and Hispanic families. Most of these families are headed by women, mothers, grandmothers, or aunts. My wife and I, who managed Eggers Crossing Village from the very beginning until my retirement after 34 years, got to know the families and their children. Back then, parents would complain to us that their children were being classified and placed in dead-end special education classes. At the same time, we noticed change in children after they started school. Before school, when we saw the children, when they came into the office with their parents, or on playing in the playground, the grounds, or in their apartment, they were talkative. They smiled. They were not bashful. But after starting school, we would see them. There was no kind of communication. They would not even look at you. Something happened to their self-image. This program also serves at-risk students throughout the district. There is a difference between families with highly educated parents and those with less educated parents. Highly educated parents talk and read more to their children. This gives them more word knowledge and more social experience in engaging with teachers and other classmates, while children from less educated families sit back and do not participate. This makes a big difference in their attitude toward learning. They tend to become withdrawn, thinking that they are less able than their classmates. As a result, their academic performance suffers and often worsens as they move from grade to grade. In 1999, we started an after-school program operated by 2 parents. We later established Every Child Value, and in 2001, we, with the superintendent, formed a partnership with Lawrence Township Public Schools that made the program more connected with the children's in-school experience. The decision to locate the program in the housing complex where the students live fostered credibility, trust, and helped to develop relationships among participating families. The response to our program has been overwhelmingly positive. and children's academic success has improved significantly. You don't have to take my word. We will give you the link to Every Child Value historic timeline that will tell you about the success that it has accomplished through the years. Today, COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 and 2021 has put another burden on our families and the learning process of their children. The pandemic has produced another challenge for us all to work together again and adhere to the phrase we did years ago: it takes a child to raise a village.
Amen.
Thank you, Fred. You're the only one that could deliver that history in such a personal voice. Now we're going to turn the program over to my colleague Laura Waters, who is going to moderate the discussion tonight.
Hi, everybody. On behalf of the board of Every Child Valued, I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives to attend this. For those of you online, welcome too. And if you know someone who wants to listen to it, get the recording. I'm Laura Waters. I'm going to be the moderator for this discussion. And I know what it's like to be in room and talk and Bob's seat, because I was on the school board for 12 years. And so don't worry, this is not good. This is from your hearts. Every Child Valued has never had a candidate night before. This year is really different. We have 1 hour trying to get a sense of what our potential board members believe about what low-income kids can achieve, both in Eggers Crossing Village and throughout the township. And there's so much at stake. Now, let me give you one example. In 2019, before the pandemic, the last time the state measured student proficiency through standardized tests, at Lawrence Township Public Schools, there was a 27-point proficiency gap between Black and white students in reading. Half of our Black students read at grade level in 3rd grade, which is a really important benchmark for future academic success. By 10th grade, that 27-point gap was 33 points. As the New York Times put it recently, COVID-19 has taken that proficiency gap for low-income kids and turned it into a proficiency gulf, exacerbating racial and socioeconomic inequities. That's what's happening right here at home, right here at Lawrence, and not just at Eggers Crossing Village, but throughout the township. Low-income children, disproportionately of color, are brimming with promise and brilliance. Just saw. But that promise is in danger of being lost unless we have school board members who recognize the components that benefit all kids: quality instruction, well-run schools, great teachers, high standards, but also the special burdens low-income students experience that require extra effort and resources. Without those extra resources, equity just becomes an empty word. I'd also like to remind everyone here, and whoever else is watching on the Zoom link or in Black and Lawrence's live stream, that we've been active partners with the district for over 20 years, bringing in far more resources to the low-income community throughout the township that we get from the district, and at no cost to the taxpayer. We need school board members who will continue to support and strengthen our program. That's why we're here. We know you care about our community, but this moment deserves urgency and action. So we're going to talk about it. Now we're going to go through like logistics of how we're going to do this. I do have a statement from one person who's on the ballot, Amanda Santos. So let me read that first. She says, "Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank Every Child Valued for facilitating this forum and for extending an invitation for me to participate. I was recently selected by the Lawrence Township Board of Education to fill an unexpired open seat on the board. However, my appointment occurred after the withdrawal date of the November election, so my name is on the ballot. even though her seat is secure. There are a number of wonderful and highly qualified individuals running for the school board this year, and I encourage everyone to select alternate candidates. Thank you to everyone for taking time out of your evening to learn about candidates running to serve in such an important role. Okay, so we, the way we're going to do this, we have Drew on the screen and Paul and Bob, and so people had the opportunity over the last 2 weeks to email in questions, and so I have them here. I combined some. There were a lot of questions, which is great. For those of you who are here tonight, you each should have received an index card, and if you have a question, just write it on the index card and give it to Tom Wilfred in the back, and we'll make sure it's here. For candidates, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then each question you get, you will have 1 minute. Reverend Ramos, it will hold up a yellow card when you have 15 seconds left, and then when you're at the limit, you will hold up a red card, and then, you know, there's like a giant gong that
Many shepherds.
We took one to his house.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right, so we are going in, just to keep everything lively, I'm not going to tell you who's going to go first. So we're going to begin with Paul, who's a 2-minute opening statement.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I just want to say real quick, thank you so much to Every Child Valued for instituting this very important forum. And I want to particularly thank Fred and Laura for framing so well what Rob and I hope to talk about this evening. So I'd just like to say to you, I am a product of the Lawrence Township Public Schools. I am proud to be that. I graduated from Lawrence High in 1974. I know I'm dating myself, but so be it. I went to Ben Franklin Elementary School. And I will tell you unabashedly that I got a first-class education in Lawrence. I ended up going to an Ivy League university. I went to graduate school at Columbia and law school at Rutgers Newark. I practiced constitutional law, both in practice and academically. I taught as adjunct faculty at Rutgers. And I owe that success from my launch pad in life, which was the Lawrence Township Public Schools. And in my generation, Lawrence was considered one of the top 20 school districts in the state of New Jersey. We were darn proud of our school, and we were entitled to be so. Unfortunately, since then, the school has dropped Lawrence High, I'm talking about now, to a ranking statewide at number 194. Now, this decline into mediocrity, to put it politely, is unnecessary, and it's inexcusable, and it cheats our kids. And we are determined to change that. And we have a concrete plan for doing so, and we'll discuss that with you this evening. Thank you. Thank you again for inviting us.
Drew?
Let's see if this works. Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. So I'm Drew Greenspan. I'm running for Board of Education, obviously. The easiest way to read more about me is to go to my website, which is votedrewgreenspan.com. I'm really excited to be involved in this conversation tonight. I got goosebumps when you, Mr. Breen, were talking about the reasoning behind Every Child Valued. I don't know a lot about it. I'm learning more every day, and the organization sounds phenomenal. The bridge between school and home life is one of the missing links to give everyone the access to the education that allows people to grow. I believe that I can be of service to the community on the Board of Education. I'm a father of 2 children. I have an 8-year-old at Lawrenceville Elementary School and a 4-year-old that desperately wants to be there. I recently got a master's in elementary education, and I am an educator. Prior to becoming an educator and getting my master's, I have a 15-year career in finance. So I believe my experience and my knowledge can put me in a position to be of service to the board and the community.
Thank you, Drew. Now let's turn to Bob.
Members of Every Child Values, members of this church, and fellow townspeople, thank you for organizing this debate and allowing me to participate in this forum. My name is Robert Pluta, and I'm a lifelong Lawrence Township resident. I went through all of the Lawrence Township Public Schools from Slackwood, LIS, Lawrence Middle School, and finally Lawrence High School, which I graduated from in 1992. I owe a debt of gratitude to all my teachers in the Lawrence school system who taught me, formed me, and educated me. Now it's my turn to give back. I am running for school board because I want to serve the same community that formed me into the man I am today. I would also like to thank ECV, Every Child Value, Fred Breen, for this wonderful learning center. I have been a longtime supporter and donor to ECV, and the success of this center is the success of our community. I look forward to listening to your concerns and questions today.
Thank you. Now we're going to turn to our questions. I'm going to start with a question that comes from the board, and then we're going to move on to community questions. So Drew, let's start with you. Why don't you tell us one thing that you think Lawrence Township Public Schools does well in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and something you wish you could do better?
Oh, me?
No, I was talking to Drew.
You can go first if you can go first if you want. 60 seconds, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so I believe Lawrence Township, the thing they do well, or the thing we do well, is we try very hard to address the conversations that are happening in society. So we're doing a good job adapting to a world that is demanding us to change in the face of the need for change. And I think that's wonderful because there are places in the country, in the state, that are not doing that. So we are trying to have the conversations that are necessary. The thing that we could do better is to give the people in Lawrence, the educators, the students, the families, more of a voice in this process, because although we are trying to respond to the world, we're not necessarily listening to what everybody is saying as best we can. So empowering everybody to have a more heard voice would be a goal of mine.
Thank you.
So I think that Lawrence school systems, they do a really good job of teaching diversity, teaching tolerance. I've seen and I've heard some of the books and resources that we use are excellent. These are wonderful, noble ideas. One concern I have, a lot of parents come to me with some concerns. I think we need to take a hard look at this curriculum, social justice curriculum, because there are certain books that are very racially charged, and kind of instead of teaching, not teaching racism, they inject racism into the conversation. And we really need to kind of take a look at this curriculum and kind of scrub out this material that is, I think, fomenting more division, very divisive. And I think we need to be united as a community and take a look at this curriculum. I think that we're doing a good job, but I think things need to be tweaked. A lot of parents are coming to me with concerns instead of asking me to run for office for school board to address these concerns, and that's what I would do.
What?
So you can't actually talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion all in 1 minute. So let me start with equity. I'm glad that we're talking about equity. I think it's important that that's part of our conversation. But we have to understand what it really means. Equity means that we strive for excellence. Because when mediocrity becomes the norm, there is no equity for anyone. And in particular, those kids who need a little extra help, a little step up, are deprived of the opportunity for equity. That takes me to the point that equity is all about allocating resources rather than paying lip service to those. And we have a concrete plan for allocating resources to make our schools more equitable, and we'll be talking about that as the forum progresses.
Okay. I'm going to move on to community questions now. It's one I just got. What innovative educational programs do you plan to support to improve academic performance of students of color? Bob, let's start here.
This learning center. I think this Every Child Values is the first thing. One of the things I disagreed with was hiring that director for $166,000. I would have taken that money, put it here, put it into Eggers Crossing, into every child value. We need boots on the ground. We don't need ideologues of order. This is where our resources should be spent. This is where the success of our children is. We need tutors here. We need tutors in our learning center. We do not need another administrator. Boots on the ground.
Okay. Drew?
So if I'm thinking about innovative programs, it's not new, but it is relatively larger and newer lately. The focus on social emotional learning. It's a very important way to get closer to this idea of equity. I imagine I'll talk more about equity later. I think I differ a little bit on the idea of equity, but it's something that allows everyone to have access to the education, a way to get an inroad into what Mr. Green started talking about, the idea of self-image. Why do you have a student that's talkative at home but not talkative at school? A lens to access the education so that everyone can reach the education would be the most important thing for me. I think my time is ticking down, so that's where I'll leave that one.
Thank you, Drew. Well,
as my running mate Rob mentioned, so one of the core elements of our program of repairing the school district in Lawrence is to make sure that we put the money, financial resources, into the classroom, into the kids, into communities like Every Child Value. Right now, we're spending $166,000 a year for an administrator who has no educational function. We're also spending money on so-called equity warriors, which is a whole other interesting thing. It's nothing to do with equity. What we want to do is hire tutors and mentors to be available for kids. We're going to take that money that's going into administration and we're going to hire tutors and mentors so that the kids who need help can get the help. And that's going to make a big difference in things like reading, math. You give a kid some help one-on-one, you're going to propel that child into a whole other dimension of achievement. That's what the kids need, not rhetoric.
Okay. This question asks you to get pretty specific. A committee member wants to know specific suggestions you would provide to help close the learning gap in Lawrence Township between low-income kids and higher-income kids. Well, let's start with you.
Okay. I want to reference something Fred very wisely pointed out in the beginning, that kids have different needs. They're functional on different ability levels. They come from different backgrounds. We have to make sure that we put the money where the kids benefit the most. And so the tutoring and mentoring program, and I want to be clear, this is for everybody, for the whole community. It's going to be important here for ECD, but it's for everybody in Lawrence Township. I want to be clear that nobody's excluded. But making this tutoring and mentoring program one of the core elements of what we're trying to accomplish is going to make a big difference in empowering kids and literally making their dreams a reality rather than a pipe dream.
Thank you. Bob?
I think we have once again to close the
learning, the learning loss of the learning gap.
Yes. Again, I think this tutoring center this is where the difference can be made with the kids, and also making sure that I know my son he has an IEP, and the counselors and the child study team is wonderful. I think they did a great job with diagnosing him, and the whole process was from start to finish. And I think just making sure that we have special ed resources and the tutoring center and the resources for kids to see, because we want to bring them up so that everybody can see the level Lawrence and do well life as well.
Sure.
I don't know if I can do the achievement gap question in 1 minute. That's okay. from my seat, it's not about money. It's not about resources. There are long-standing systemic issues, biases, whatever bias you want to look at that are at play here. Getting to the base of that, finding a way to move forward in spite of that and potentially changing that, though that would be everybody's goal. That would be the goal. How do you do that? Throwing money at the situation is a nice short-term fix. More tutoring is a nice short-term fix because it boosts them up. But why are these systemic issues there? What is causing the self-image issue? What is causing the situation that these children whose brains are all the same when they start, obviously they need different things, but what's causing them to not access the education in the same way? Getting the access to that education, that's the place we need to focus. And again, I'm going to say it over and over and over again, social emotional learning, giving everyone a voice. That's the best way I can see to do it. Everything else is just Band-Aid on a bigger problem.
That's interesting, Drew. There's a question that from the community that actually applies to what you just said. So I'm going to just jump to that one. The question is, what do you think about the difference between equity and equality? Do they require different kinds of efforts from school board members? Jeff, I know this, I feel like shaking things up. Jeff is going to come and saying, can they have a minute and 30 seconds for that?
Let's call an audible.
Okay.
90 seconds.
90 seconds. Because this, you're right. Everyone, you're all right. You can't do these seconds. So let's look really liberal if you do 90 seconds. So let's start. So just so you remember the question, we're talking about the difference between equity and equality, and what are the different efforts in order to meet those challenges. What does that require of school board members?
Yellow's going to mean 20 seconds left.
Okay.
What is the difference between equity and quality? I think quality, all kids should have equal equality, equal start, equal chance. You don't always might not get the same result, but all kids should get the same opportunities that everybody has, whether it be from a lower or higher socioeconomic level. So, you know, the way we do that is, like I said, by making sure that we have all the resources for these kids in the school system. You know, providing them with, you know, from K up to 12th grade. I think sometimes that, you know, you might equality doesn't always, you know, every kid should have the same playing field. You might always, you know, I think everybody has different outcomes just because we're all different people. We all have different qualities, you know, but every kid should get an equal and fair start in our school system.
Drew?
This is another one I could probably take 2 hours on. Equity versus equality. So this phrase, education is the great equalizer, is kind of something that's thrown around. And the problem is we're not equal. And we've been saying that for quite a while. So we can throw the same books, we could throw more money, we could throw more books at a situation. And that hasn't solved the problem because we all know that we are not equal. And no amount of shifting money from bucket to bucket or curriculum from room to room is going to change that. So how do we give each kid the access to the education? And that's how I view equity. Each kid's ability to access that education, which can be the great equalizer. And that's going to be different for each child. That's going to be different for each community. That's going to be different in each classroom. So that's just what needs to get done. It's not going to be equal. It's going to be equitable, and everyone will have access to the education, which is the role of education. Now, as a board member being around that, I don't set the curriculum. I don't set the policy. I am as transparent as I can be and as communicative as I can about the fact that equity and equality are different things. Different kids will get different things because everyone needs access to that education. And as of right now, they don't have it. And that's a problem. So time's up.
So equal opportunity, just to be clear, is the law. That we treat all kids the same, that no one is discriminated against. That's required legally and morally. What I'm talking about is that we have to be smarter about how we allocate our resources so that the kids who need specific help can get that help. That's how we provide equality of opportunity. There's absolutely no logic to talking about equity and equality as ideological or rhetorical terms when we have policies in place that don't put the resources where the kids need them. It is about resources, I assure you. It's the teachers who make the difference. I've spent a lot of time in classrooms, and I like to believe that I made a difference for my students. I know I adore and respect my teachers in Lawrence who made a difference for me. That's what it's all about. It's not about throwing around ideological terms in a forum. It's about boots on the ground and tangible resources to help our children.
And a related question from the community. Are you concerned that there are special interest groups focused on social issues that are divisive and the group focused on academic excellence? Welcome and start with you.
Could you just repeat the first part of the question?
And it's not part of your plans.
Yeah.
Are you concerned that there are special interest groups focused on social issues that are divisive and dilute the focus on academic excellence?
Well, of course. And this is part of the problem, and it's part of what's running down the qualitative level of the school, because there's way too much emphasis being placed on teaching ideology rather than focusing on education. I mean, for example, one of the books that's used in 6th grade is called Not My Idea, which is frankly a book that preaches racial, ethnic, and religious divisiveness and flat out hatred, some parents point out. And you know, this is very harmful to children. And it really interferes with the educational mission, and we're absolutely opposed to this sort of thing. There should not be any kind of divisiveness or alienation of children based on where their family goes to church, what their skin color is, what their ethnic heritage is, or anything like that. Yet this book, and we have the book, Not My Idea, it's called, says a lot of these bad things in it, and it's being used in 6th grade right here in Lawrence. That's the kind of thing that's really counterproductive, and it's got to go.
Yeah, I echo Paul's sentiments. I think that, you know, we're taking something that's good and beautiful and twisting it into something that's divisive. You know, I want this curriculum to be taught in a good and pure way, so that we don't, you're spitting in the face of Martin Luther King. You know, people should be judged on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. So let's take this divisive material out of our curriculum. Please return to a good curriculum that does teach racial harmony without. I don't want the schools to be political. I want politics out of school. I want kids to be taught this in a pure way.
Drew?
Sure, I'll bite. Oh, so I'm going to buy that book first. It sounds wonderful. I love what I bumped into in Lawrence. The educators, the planners of the curriculum, the staff, the administration, all very thoughtful people. If there's a book in the curriculum, I imagine it ties in with a broader goal. That being said, the idea that education and schools exist in a vacuum away from societal issues that the kids are talking about anyway and the families are talking about anyway, that's silliness to me. We live in a world that is filled with conflict. Giving the kids a safe space to have this conversation and teaching them how to do that, that's probably one of the most important things we as educators can do for these kids, teaching them how to disagree, how to agree, how to have a conversation. So purposely keeping these types of things out, no, clearly throwing gasoline on a fire, that's not a good idea. But I trust the Lawrence district. I trust what the educators and the experts in this district are doing, because they're in charge and they're doing a really good job. We're walking through difficult times where emotions are running hot at all times. And you know what? It's going to get a little uncomfortable, but hopefully progress through pain is the end result here. I'm happy to have those conversations as long as they're done through a lens of teaching the kids how to be happy and healthy human beings.
Okay, thank you very much, Drew. We're going to move on to another question. I'm going to start with Bob. Describe what you would do to attract Black and Latino candidates to vie for positions as administrators, teachers, or staff in the Lawrence County Public School System. I'll just throw out factoid. Right now, 3% of Lawrence Township Public School staff are Black.
Sure. So I would, defer that to the Human Resources Department. I think that we should have a staff that reflects our community. That's really important because, especially if you have a child that's Black, you want to have look up to and have mentors that are your skin color. I think that's a beautiful thing. I know I still remember my teachers in Slackwood school. We had Black teachers and white teachers, and it's a beautiful thing. We do need a diverse teaching staff. Diversity is a beautiful thing, and it's good. And we should be doing things to encourage people to come work with the school system that are of color. We need a wide variety, especially so that kids can look up. I think it's really important for kids in the community, African American community, to have mentors and teachers to look up to know that they can grow up and be a teacher one day themselves too, or a doctor, whatever they want to be. These are good and beautiful, noble goals.
Drew? And the question just did ask if there was anything specific that you think of.
So can you clarify the question one more time? I missed it. You broke up, and thank you.
Describe what you would do to attract Black and Latino candidates to vie for positions as administrators, teachers, or staff in the Lawrence Township Public School System.
So I think we're beginning to do that, and it's a long road to get there because it's about the culture of Lawrence for teachers or administrators or staff that would come in to fill those roles. When I was in graduate school getting my master's in education, a lot of the let's say my friends that were minorities, they would talk about places they would want to go or places they wouldn't want to go, and it has to feel like a place where the culture is actually believing what it is that we all say. We all say equity, diversity, inclusion, but those things mean different things to different people, and it's lip service from others. So hiring that, I believe one of the other two gentlemen called it a waste of $160,000 for that role. That's a good way to show the world that we care about changing the culture because we're investing in this. We're putting our money where our mouth is. We're going to change the culture here. You will be able to teach the way you want to teach in your heart, because that's where teachers teach from in the end. So those types of things are the way I would attack it from a board member position as well. Make sure that people know that the culture is changing and actually try and change the culture to attract those teachers, because clearly we're not. The number I think you said was 3%, and that's atrocious given the district that we live in. So we could definitely do better there, showing that the culture is what we say it is.
Well, I actually grew up here, and I can tell you that Lawrence has always been a diverse community with contributions from so many different people of different backgrounds. One thing I'm not going to accuse the school system of is discriminating in employment. I don't think there's any evidence of that, and I don't think it's fair to suggest that against the superintendent or against any principal or anybody else in the system. But again, I want to come back to what we touched on in the last question, which is that, diversity and inclusion means tolerance for everyone, with no exceptions, and with no labeling of some people and some groups as being good and other groups as being bad. And so one of the first things I would suggest is getting rid of textbooks and curricula and agenda which promulgate this kind of social toxin. And I think our goal really has to be to see ourselves not as members of separate camps be it ideological or ethnic or religious, but to see ourselves as members of one great, wonderful community called Lawrence Township, who all work together to support each other and who implement educational policies that reflect those values. And that's what I'm determined to do on the school board.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to another question from the community. How do you feel about Black history being taught as a full year history course instead of being just taught during Black History Month? And Paul, let's start with you.
Let's start with me.
Yep.
You know, I've actually spent a lot of time teaching history and law, so maybe that's why you're starting with me. I mean, this is an expansive subject. It's tough to be succinct, but listen, we learned a great deal about Black history when I was in Lawrence High in the early 1970s. So it's not that, you know, it's ever been ignored or neglected, and it's part of American history. It's part of our national, social, cultural narrative. I'm a firm believer in the core curriculum. I think we'll get to that point tonight. And history is really essential to that. One thing I would point out is that what's really important when you're teaching history is that you don't select a narrowly defined, ideologically driven narrative, but that you're stereoscopic, that you're penumbral, that you compel children to understand history in the full context of the whole spectrum. Because in history, everything that happens affects everything else. So the Black experience in American history affects all of American history. And the other elements of American history also impact and affect the evolution of Black Americans and their history here. So it's a big, broad thing that you've got to bring together.
Drew?
Okay, so teaching students. So as an educator, I'm very purposeful about how I learn with my students about any subject. So if we're doing reading at a first grade level or a third grade level, which is where I am, I should pick authors. I should pick stories. I should pick things that resonate with all of the communities that are touched, definitely in the district or in the classroom, but in society in general. So the idea that Black History Month is embarrassingly only focused on for 1 month, and poorly, if you're asking my personal opinion, it should be something that's in the curriculum all the time at all levels. We should be more purposeful as a community to make sure that we're saying this is something that's important to us. And I think if as a board member or as a board, we say these things are important by the way we talk about this, by the way we have this conversation, the teachers want to do this. The teachers are already doing this. Let the teachers do their jobs. They bring the expertise that I got that says, this is the best way to teach. If you want to teach reading, teach about something that the students are connected to and interested in, and that will increase their connection to it and engagement with it. So whether you're going to have a whole course in Black history for the entire year, sounds like a great idea, but clearly resources are an issue in this conversation tonight. Bring it into the whole curriculum all the time, just like everything else. Sorry, I went over.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful idea. I mean, the African American story here in America is such a rich and some sad, of course, story, but the obstacles we've overcome, I think we could all learn from that. I think that yes, it should be woven throughout the whole year. You know, I don't know how it would be done with textbooks or curriculum-wise. I mean, that's something that yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I definitely think that that Black history should be taught perhaps throughout the whole year in all grade levels, because it's a beautiful story, a story of resilience and overcoming such great hardships, and how proud we are of the African American community through the hard work of Fred Reed. So the answer is yes. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. All right. There's another question, and we're going to start with you, Drew. What steps would you take in order to promote inclusion and diversity for Spanish-speaking families in the district?
are you looking for specifics here or just kind of broad strokes or whichever?
I think everyone would be happy to get some specifics.
So if we're talking about diversity, inclusion, and equity in that community as well, it would be the same as everything else. How do we reach the home life? How do we bridge the school and the home life? Just like this community center, this community does it in this way. How do we bridge that? And I mean, that could be anything. It wouldn't be at the board level, obviously, but bringing up ideas about how to do this and supporting the teachers, supporting the administrators, supporting the schools in connecting that school and home life, whether it be through extended hours, language assistance in terms of communication, or just ways to make it easier to connect those two spaces. Once you connect those two spaces, all the research shows that that is what allows students to access the education. So if we're doing our job, if the educators are doing their job, which they are in the classrooms, and as a board, we're saying it's important to communicate better with your communities, that would be the best way to do it in my mind, and just sending that message from the board. This is important. It's important to communicate more with all of your diverse communities that you interact with, figure out a way to do it. That's the most important thing. And that's kind of where my messaging would be.
Thank you. What?
You know, if you want people to feel at home and welcome here, and that's what we do want, you have to actually walk the walk. The first things you can do is to get rid of terribly divisive books like Not My Idea, which contains a picture of the house of, quote, bad people, which is so identified by the fact that there's a statue of the Virgin Mary in front of it, along with the American flag. So you can't have that kind of divisiveness, which obviously is going to make many people of Spanish origin feel very uncomfortable. You can't keep putting that kind of divisive stuff into the classroom and talk about inclusion and diversity at the same time. That's not just a mixed message, it's a flat out contradiction. So let's be real. Let's actually practice what we preach and make everyone in Lawrence Township feel welcome, and not pick and choose preferred versus disliked groups in terms of what's being communicated in our curriculum and in the textbooks that the school board and the teachers use.
Okay, thank you, Fawn. Bob?
I echo Fawn's sentiments, and I agree with them. I think that, you know, my wife is from Poland, and I remember that when it's hard to navigate the intricacies of the school system, especially when you don't know the language. And I know a lot of people in the Hispanic community might have the same issue. I just remember how things that I took for granted, like letters coming home from school, or just even navigating, like I said, my son has an IP, just navigating those intricacies of how do you work with those counselors calling home. So I think it's really important that we do have resources, bilingual resources, counselors that speak Spanish, that could really help these families. I know firsthand what it's like to have, you know, in this case, an immigrant, like if one parent being an immigrant, you know, trying to navigate the system. And we need to, you know, because we have such a big influx of Hispanics, we need to welcome them into the community. This is all about inclusion. We are one community. We are all human beings. We're in this together, and I want to see everybody succeed. So yes, I do think that the Hispanic community is important. We should help them.
Thank you. Okay, here's another question. What do you bring to the board that is different than what the incumbents bring? I'm gonna go right back to you.
Well, I'm not an educator. I sell meatballs for a living. So, but I have common sense and I know right from wrong. And so perhaps I could bring that perspective of just being a parent, I'm a Lawrence resident, I grew up there with all the schools. And I think I could be that, bring a good perspective to the school board. And I think I could, you know, as a businessman too, you know, fiscally, I have a lot of fiscal conservative. I could maybe bring some ideas that way too. So I hope that you would consider voting for me for school board.
What?
Well, I have a lot of experience teaching. My first teaching experience goes all the way back to 1978. When I was a teaching assistant in graduate school at Columbia, I taught Introduction to American Government. Since then, I've taught many classes at Rutgers as adjunct faculty. I've taught First Amendment, constitutional law, constitutional theory. Those are difficult things to teach, but I've learned a lot about what works and how to be effective in the classroom. And I've learned that you need to have a strategy of education. You need to have a policy and a strategy that you're prepared to implement. And above all, I think I learned that people rise to their expectations. And the systemic problem we have in the school system in Lawrence today is that we have declined to this abysmal position of being ranked number 194 in New Jersey, when we really have no excuse for not being the equivalent of a good prep school, frankly. And that requires a commitment to excellence, a commitment to standards, and a dedication to really having an education-driven agenda with a clear strategy for implementation. And based on my experience, I think I know how to implement that. And that is what I intend to do. And that's how we will deliver equity.
Drew?
All I'm thinking about is meatballs now. I eat meatballs, I don't make meatballs. So I am an educator. I'm a certified K through 6 teacher. I'm a father of 2. I know how to understand the education of children. I have a 15-year career in finance, so I understand how to work in business situations, business dynamics, and high stress situations. That being said, and I think the board does a great job for the most part. I think we could do a little bit better, and I'm not saying they're not already doing this, but what I intend to bring to the board is an open mind and an ear to listen and learn. I want to learn from the community. I've heard community said a lot in this forum, especially at the beginning when we're talking about where we are today, where I am virtually today. Community is important, and I want to hear what everyone is saying so that I can be of service to the community using my skills and experiences.
Thank you very much. We're going to have one more question from the community, and then we're going to move to closing statements. So I'm going to finish up with another community question. If you had to choose one issue that would make a difference for children of color and low-income children in this district, what issue would you focus on? And I think we'll just go from here right across. Bob?
One issue to focus on is work.
To help the achievement, the academic achievement and growth of low-income students of color.
I think again, it's a hard question. So I think this tutoring center and just having one issue would be just the learning gap. I know some of these, like Nicole Cody was telling me about the breakfast program that you have here. It's wonderful. And, because some of these kids, sometimes we take for granted what I grew up with, now that some of these kids might have. So giving them a good breakfast before they come to school, tutoring after school, the programs that, I took my son once to a basketball clinic over in the center here. So all the good work that Fred Green and you guys are doing here is wonderful. And I think this is, and I'm glad I was able to come here. I've never seen this building, but I think this is where it all starts. This is where we need to help these children so that they can succeed. Because perhaps maybe they don't have the background at home or the help at home that I took for granted growing up, or family structure. But this is where we need to help them at the student center to help them also.
Thank you. Well,
in asking me to identify one specific issue, what comes to my mind is a quote from many years ago from an interesting man, former senator and UN ambassador, Daniel Patrick Moynihan. And Senator Moynihan was an old school Democrat from way back. And he complained about what he called, and I quote, the soft bigotry of diminished expectations. And that's exactly what we're confronted with, what this board refuses to address, and what I hate to say previous boards have not wanted to address. This downward slide from being a top-notch school in New Jersey to being ranked number 194. It's the diminished expectations, the lowering of standards that deprives kids of opportunity and cheats them of their rightful claim to equity. That's why we need to restore excellence as a goal. We need a core curriculum to do that. And we have to commit ourselves to restoring educational excellence as a matter of policy and as a matter of principle as well.
Drew?
I apologize if I got caught up in that. Will you ask the question one more time?
Of course. If you could have, if you could choose one issue that would help raise the achievement of low-income children of color in Lawrence Township, what issue would you focus on?
It's got to be social emotional learning to get to a space where we're starting to address some of the systemic issues that lead to that achievement gap. I mean, that achievement gap is atrocious. It's embarrassing. It's sad that it exists, and we don't focus on that at all times. What makes two kids that come into a room exactly the same or relatively the same? What about that school system teaches one of them that they're not good, that they're not good enough to exist in that space? I'm reminded, I'll probably run out of time here with the story, but I'm reminded of a time I was in a classroom, in a math classroom. At the beginning of this math classroom, one of the students left every time to go to the bathroom, to get a book, to go to their locker, whatever. This is a young grade, this is beneath 4th grade. And she just could not engage with the subject. Something told her, somebody told her, some part of the situation that we've created, this education system, had her internalize that she's not good at that. She can't do that. She can't engage. And the easiest way to get her to engage, because by the end of that year, she was solidly engaged. Just take a deep breath and tell yourself you're good enough. You can do this. You're capable. You are valuable. You are smart. You are the same as everybody else. Something as simple as that, just to address this issue. Not too expensive, doesn't take a lot of resources. Let the teachers teach where they want to teach, where the research tells them they should be teaching through that lens.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you everybody for your patience through all this. We are going to move now to closing statements, and we'll just move across again if that's okay.
And how much, Madam Moderator, how much time for closing statements?
The closing statements are 2 minutes. Yeah.
So I want to thank you all for coming to this debate tonight. One thing that struck me was that 2 years ago, the last council race, there were about 6,000 people that voted in the column, the regular council on down from the elected offices. And the school board, only 3,000 people voted. It means that half the people that went to that voting booth walked out without voting for school board. So I want to thank you guys for organizing this, because this is the way that, without this, the message wouldn't get out. We wouldn't have a lively debate. This is just such an important resource for people to go into there and be an informed voter, because like I said, half the people don't vote for school board. And this is so important. This is our future. These are our kids. These are the people that are going to be growing up and hopefully sitting here one day in the future. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for it. Thank you, Mr. Green, too. I have such admiration for you for all the work we've done for this community. And if you haven't already done so, we ask you to vote for Engel and Pluto for school board. And we are committed to restoring excellence in education.
Well,
again, thank you, all of you, for this wonderful opportunity. Let me start by referencing the term achievement gap that's been used, because I think it's central to what we're trying to achieve here. I don't care whether you're Black, white, Latino, Polish, Indian, you name the group. First of all, I believe in treating everyone the same with no discrimination. All of us together as a community have an achievement gap vis-a-vis the state of New Jersey. We're ranked number 194. The achievement gap is our kids versus everybody else's kids. The difference between us and the incumbents is that we have a concrete plan to fix it. We're going to institute a rigorous core curriculum that emphasizes teaching language skills, history, science, mathematics, literature, development of Western thought. We're going to reallocate resources. We're going to stop the rhetoric. You can say anything you want about equity and diversity and so forth, but if you don't cough up the cash, if you don't bring the resources to the kids, those words don't mean anything. We're going to institute tutoring and mentoring programs, and we're going to make sure those resources go to every child value. And yeah, we're going to cut from administration and expenses like that that have no direct correlation to the educational mission. And finally, we are going to demand that things, ideas, texts, notions that are divisive, that alienate children be eliminated from our curriculum. And, you know, finally, I want you to know, I'm a product of this system. I'm proud of it. My heart breaks to where it has gone. I'm determined to restore excellence in education. And I'm doing that for our kids. Our heart is in this, and I hope you'll support us in that mission. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Drew.
There we go. So this has been a good conversation. I think it's an important conversation. I'm glad we're having it. I think everyone in this room, everyone on my side of the room, heart is in the right place. We want to fix things, but it's not going to help it to pretend like we don't have issues. It's time to move forward, not backwards. We don't want to look back to the 70s because although some people got a first-class education, not everyone did. And not everyone is still getting that first-class education. That achievement gap exists. And it's between, I think the stat that was said in the beginning, 27% between Black and white students. It wasn't an achievement gap between Lawrence and Princeton. It was an achievement gap that can be focused on because it exists. How do we fix it? We keep having these conversations. We bring up the fact that these problems are there. The educators have ways to fix it. We're doing the things to move forward. Finally, not fully, but finally, we're having the conversations. It's uncomfortable. I don't know what the name of that book was that I didn't realize was necessary reading. Not My Idea. I looked up the end part of it. Not My Idea, a book about whiteness. The conversation that all of society is having right now. That's not a divisive book. We live in a difficult time. Let's have the conversation so that we can all have this conversation and say, how can we make schools a place where equity is actually focused upon? Not everyone getting the same thing, but everyone having access to achieve their potential. That's what equity stands for in education. It's not about equality in that respect. This is not constitutional law. This is teaching young students, and it's about access to their potential. I think we all want them to have that. And I think the best thing we can do as board members is listen to the community. If the community wants to go in these directions, that's where we should go because that's where the world is. So that's all I got.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for those of you who joined us online, those who joined us in the room, and let's thank our candidates for coming tonight. It has been an energetic and passionate evening, and we appreciate all of your commitment for being here and to being engaged with our community. Thank you especially to everybody who asked questions tonight, who participated. You know, there are lots of resources to learn more about these candidates and the others who are running. The League of Women Voters also held a discussion, which I believe is available online, so you can watch that as well. This conversation has been recorded. It's going to be linked through the ECV Facebook page as well as the Black and Lawrence Facebook page. So please encourage others to listen and to take in what we've heard tonight. I want to especially thank two members of our ECV community, Dr. Chris Woolley and his son, Jeremy Woolley, for their magic thing happened, things happened that not all of us understood that brought us all together tonight. So thank you all. Thanks to First Baptist Church of Eggerts Crossing. This space is an amazing community resource. ECB has taken advantage of it. We're privileged to have to be able to be in here tonight, and thank you for sharing your community with all of us. Lastly, I will say, vote. Find out what's going on out there. Find out how you can vote. There's early voting this year. There's in-person voting. There's mail ballots. Please vote. Do your research. Listen to what the candidates are telling you. Have conversations with each other, and then get out there and vote. The statistics that Bob cited about half of people walking out of the voting booth without voting for school board is a shame. And let's not let that be any of us. So thank you all, and good night. On behalf of the East School Board, thank you.
I'd like to say something. I'd like to introduce a family, and I hope I don't embarrass them. The Feliciano family. Mr. Feliciano, one of his children were put in special ed one time, and it really has helped push us to do something back then. And he picketed the Board of Education because of that. So my hat's off to Feliciano.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.